Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another genre, guys. We're so happy that you're here and we're so happy to talk to you. This weather that we've been having, it's been so hot and humid. It's been just a killer on my skin, on just going around, being outside and everything. And sometimes feels like you just need a bit of an escape. What do you guys say?
Yeah, I think, by the way, you've just distinguished us as one of the very few movie review programs to talk about skincare. But yeah, good old-fashioned escape, certainly inside with the air conditioning on.
Yes.
It puts the lotion on its skin.
Oh. We might have to do that movie sometime in the future as well.
Yes, absolutely.
So today we're talking about Escape from New York, and in a lot of ways, I feel that this movie was kind of prescient because I would dare say argue that quite a lot of people have been trying to escape from New York in the past couple of years. But that's
true.
That is neither here nor there.
But actually, I don't know whether Carpenter ever got it from this, but many, many years before this, I don't know how many, I think it was Heinlein, did a sci-fi novel where in the future, New York gets so impossible, they move everybody out, they nuke it, they pile the rubble into one corner and call it Mount Manhattan and start over again. So this is kind of the same idea, only with walls.
That seems like a reasonable proposition. I don't know. No?
Well, what do you do with all the good people, the few of them that are left? Anyway, this is fantasy, not reality.
Yes. So New York is set in the far-flung future of 1997.
Yeah.
And starring Kurt Russell, among some others, including Ernest Borgnine, which I was surprised by. And
he seems like too classy and big an actor to be in this movie, doesn't he? That's what my thought was.
Well, I was just like, he just pops up in the strangest places, I find. It was bizarre seeing him here, but you quickly kind of get used to it. And this movie is, well, I guess you would call it a bit of a cult classic, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I don't think it's as well known as some of the others we could mention. I mean, they know the name, they know the plot, basically, but I don't know that it's getting a lot of replay or reviewing nowadays, and it probably deserves it. It's certainly, it's a lot simpler, a lot flatter than I remember it. It's a lot more a movie that about 30 or 40% of it is second unit stuff just strung together. Go get me a bunch of shots of guards on a wall and copters flying and radar and whatever, and we'll cut it together into a movie. You know what I mean? It's a lot of it is just sort of empty second unit stuff. Well done, but still. Supposedly, when they were going to make it, obviously they realized they couldn't do it in New York. And so the story I heard was the location manager and the art director were sent out on a tour of, quote, the worst cities in America.
Oh, no.
And the one that they found that they liked and used was St. Louis, where they talked the city into letting them turn off the power for 10 blocks radius of wherever they were shooting at night. And also the bridge at the end that plays a big part in the plot was some old bridge in St. Louis that they literally bought from the city for $1.
Wow.
Shot the scenes and then sold it back to them for $1. The whole reason being, if something had gone wrong with the pyro, the city didn't want the liability. They were happy to have the show shooting in town, but they didn't want to take the risk. So
interesting.
Anyway, and they said that when they were doing those scenes of all these wrecked streets, they literally took a couple of dump trucks to the local dump and shoveled in everything they could find that was, old washing machines and car parts and whatever, and put them in a couple of dump trucks and drove them to wherever the shoot was going to be and spread them around. And that was how they did this, and then picked it all up and took it back.
But before we get into that, I think we should do a quick little overview.
Yeah, sure.
And Lorn, do you want to give it a go?
Sure. So this is a really straightforward, simple tale. It actually is not terribly complicated. As you alluded to at the beginning, it's the far-flung future of 1997. There's a prologue section where they talk about how in the year 1988, crime had increased in the United States by 400%. And so a decision was made that they were going to wall off Manhattan Island and turn it into a federal prison for the United States. And when you go in, you don't come out. They make food drops there, but otherwise the prison island is completely uninhabited except by the criminals who have been incarcerated there. And at the beginning of the movie, you have Snake Plissken, played by Kurt Russell, who has been arrested for robbing a federal
reserve
depository.
Yeah.
And right around this same time, they get notification within the prison in the prison guard's house that there is a plane in distress over the prison island. And they're trying to determine who's in command of this plane, and they discover that its call sign isn't on any registry. So they contact the feds back in D.C. and discover that this is actually Air Force One. And the president is on his way to an important summit in Hartford, Connecticut, with ambassadors from both Russia and China to try and avert World War III, because the world is currently in a massive energy crisis, and the United States has made a breakthrough with nuclear fusion that they're planning to share so that there will be abundant energy for all, and hopefully there won't be a war coming. So the plane goes... yeah. The plane goes down within Manhattan. The president escapes in an escape pod. He has a tracker on his body, and he's carrying a briefcase handcuffed to his wrist that contains the contents of his speech and an audio tape that is going to be making this scientific revelation. And so the commissioner of the police, Hauk, played by Lee Van Cleef, wonderful role, brings Plissken in and makes him an offer. Says, essentially, you'll get a full pardon and you'll be released if you go in and retrieve the president, but there's a 24-hour ticking clock on this thing because that's when the summit occurs. And if the president and the tape don't get out within that time frame, pretty much the world's going to go to war, and your the president's life and your life won't be worth spit. Plissken doesn't want to go in, but he's convinced because he's given very little time to make the decision. He says, well, it looks like I'm going to be going in either way. And so he agrees to at least make the attempt. Before he goes in over the wall, he has a medical examination. They tell him that they're going to screen him for infections and give him essentially some medication. They use a couple of hypo sprays and they inject him. And then the doctor turns to Hauk and says, tell him. The snake says, tell me what? And what they've actually done is they've injected two minuscule explosives into his arteries, and they're in a decaying shell that will last for that basically 22-hour left period. If he doesn't get the president out within that time, then it'll be a micro explosion, but it'll open up his arteries and kill him. So now he's very much on a ticking clock. They're going to insert him into the island on a gull wing that is planning to land on the World Trade Center. And Hauk tells him, you know that idea you got about turning that gull wing around 180 degrees and heading to Canada? Well, if you try it, you're going to die. And that's the premise of the movie. Once you get into the wasteland that is this federal prison, he's going to encounter the crazies, all kinds of people that live in the subways. There's implications of cannibalism. It's just a fun dystopian movie. It's about an hour and 40 minutes. It's a real quick ride, and it's a lot of fun.
Yep.
And an interesting cast of characters with it, too.
Stellar cast. It's got an amazing cast in this movie.
Donald Pleasence is the president. Mm-hmm. And we mentioned Ernest Borgnine, who plays a guy called Cabby, who's a cab driver who says he's been in there 30 years, which means he sort of never left when it started. The head of the gangs there is the Duke, played by Isaac Hayes, of all people. There's a guy named the Brain, Harold Hellman, who's played by Harry Dean Stanton, who is the guy who's figuring out that they drilled for oil to make the few cars that still work run, and is kind of the science advisor to the Duke, and his girlfriend, Adrienne Barbeau. And I have to tell you guys, I cannot remember when I started looking for pictures of this and to do the somewhat tongue-in-cheek thumbnail that you've all seen. Mm-hmm. Have you seen any movie that she's ever been in that didn't feature her and her rather bountiful bosom in the ads?
I can't think of a reason why you wouldn't.
Yeah.
I don't, but this is the only movie I've ever seen that she's in that they don't. I mean, in the movies, she's wearing an outfit that's very revealing, but not obscenely so. But it's like that was her big deal. She was this tough broad with big boobs, and it's nowhere in any of the advertising. I mean, why they thought even Ernest Borgnine and Lee Van Cleef would draw more attention to somebody to buy tickets, I don't know. But I thought that was kind of a standout of this movie. By the way, that prologue that explains the situation is voiced uncredited by Jamie Lee Curtis.
Oh.
And the guy who plays, he actually plays, but is not in the movie. Apparently there was a whole prologue of about 15 minutes showing Snake Plissken doing this robbery that he got convicted for. But they decided they didn't need it and got rid of it. So
that's the same one that they talk about later in the movie when they meet the brain, because that's where he ran out on him. It's when he's robbing the depository. Fresno Bob actually gets caught and killed, and when Snake's trying to get out, he gets pinched and the brain gets away. That's actually on YouTube if you want to go find it.
It's on some special edition of the movie too, that they literally lost it and found it somewhere in a lab or something. But also the guy that's the sidekick in that, actor named Joe Unger, is the co-author because he was a buddy of Carpenter's. Why? Because he's an actor first, and guess who he was in his first role in the movies? He was Jason Voorhees in the original.
Oh, that's funny. Well, going back to your question, Lou, though, about Adrienne Barbeau, I note that in her filmography, one of the follow-up films that she did to this is Cannibal Women in the Avocado Jungle of Death.
There you go. A classic.
It's possible that they might not have focused on her assets. We'll put it that way.
Well, she was actually a very good actress, but that was certainly how she got her career.
Yeah.
As being not the pretty blonde with boobs, but the hard-edged brunette with short hair with boobs. Anyway, but it's got everything your classic dystopian future kind of movie has. And by the way, Kurt Russell desperately wanted to do this movie because he was so tired of being typecast in these, basically the same Disney movie kind of plots that he grew up with.
Right.
He wanted a hard edge role. One of the other things that surprised me that I hadn't remembered in watching it, he's not very buff in this thing. I thought I remembered him as being way pumped up, but not really. I mean,
it's the same as in Escape from L.A. He's not buff. He's just kind of how would you say it? Muscularly slim, I suppose, would be the best way to put it.
I guess I don't buy that guy would have been able to beat all those guys, but that's just me. And we mentioned that he's arrested for this robbery, but he's also a former special forces hero who, quote unquote, went bad. And that plane, that glider he flies in, it was, I flew that over Leningrad back in the war, whatever. And they throw all these little references to the history of that time that we never hear any details about, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, they make reference to the fact that he was involved in campaigns in Leningrad and Siberia. And he received the Purple Heart and was the youngest soldier ever awarded by the President of the United States. And so he's got a service record that everybody knows.
Right.
And yet the running gag throughout the film is whenever someone meets him, they say, "Hey, I know you. I thought you were dead."
Yeah, he's supposed to be famous. And they filmed it in all of these decrepit old theaters and offices and civic buildings that were totally deserted. The best way to describe it, I think a lot of people have seen all those pictures of similarly rundown buildings in Detroit these days that used to be grand and they're now, a lot of that was done for them as far as set design was concerned. And of course, the computer graphics are intentionally wireframe cheap. Certainly less detailed than they would have been in 1969 in the real world, but this is in the 80s. So,
have you seen some of the behind the scenes material on the making of that wireframe stuff?
No.
It's not wireframe. That's not computer generated imagery.
Oh,
That model that you're looking at right there was a very detailed model of New York. It's actually one of the most impressive things about the movie is they did some stellar miniature work. But at the time, they didn't have a budget or really the technology to do the kind of wireframe stuff that you would expect them to do. So what they did was they took those models and they put reflective green tape on it and then shot it in darkness so that it looked like it was a wireframe model.
So it's basically a blacklight set. I
That's
see.
exactly what it is.
I think I read that somewhere, but I hadn't seen these pictures or the details. Clever stuff.
okay.
Clever stuff.
Yeah, very much so.
And
So-
for $6 million, this is a lot of movie, even back then, especially since it made 25 and counting.
Yeah, no, the you can feel that they really tried to squeeze that budget as much as possible. And like you said, Lou, it was $6 million budget. They ended up making 25.2 million. It was released in 1981. So I guess at that time, 1997 seemed so far away. And it always throws me for a little bit of a loop these days when I watch a film, which either dystopian or utopian, and they're looking at the far future of 1997 or the far future of 2001, 2010, right?
Well,
And
Demolition Man, we saw the same thing where
Yeah.
it was like, gee, they guessed right a lot, you know?
they did. And this one, I gotta tell you, like the way the way the world is set up is that obviously the president and the American government have kind of fallen into, I guess, a Democrat's sort of worst nightmare of an authoritarian, totalitarian state, which is how this huge prison in the shape of Manhattan Island came to be. And so, Lorn, when you were giving your brief overview of the plot at the beginning, the plane that the president was on ended up being hijacked by, I guess, a radical socialist saying they'll never give in to, they'll fight back, they'll fight the fascist pigs, and this is sort of your comeuppance and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
And-
to them it was poetic justice. It's like we're going to actually make the president live in the kind of terrible place that he's created for the people.
Well, except I don't know that they knew he would survive. They were just crashing the plane.
Yeah, my thought was that they were just going to crash the plane and wipe everybody out, but he had that little red escape pod.
Well, the thing that I think is interesting, part of the framing of this movie is that imagine if the Soviet Union had not collapsed, and that's kind of the vision that they went with, is that imagine that things kept grinding in the Cold War and getting worse and worse, and that it had actually turned into a hot war at some point, and China had gotten involved, and the whole world is just really on the brink as this military conflict has been going on, and resources are being ground down, and it's basically the whole world is literally on the brink of complete annihilation when this whole thing goes down. And looking at things from that standpoint in the 80s, not knowing what was going to happen 8 years later, you could kind of see how they would end up with this vision.
Yeah. Well, of course, there were quite a few the end of the world, apocalypse movies, but most of them, well, I mean, look at things like Failsafe and, for that matter, Dr. Strangelove, 7 Days in May. But they were all taking it very seriously.
Yeah.
And most of them came from books by political columnists who wrote what if fiction. So it's a fascinating movie for a lot of reasons, but to me, it's just that it's simple. It doesn't play any games with you. It's all there, and it's got wonderful crazies. It's a compendium. In fact, because this movie was so relatively early in this cycle, when you watch it now, your question is, did everybody else copy this, or did this copy everybody else? There's common elements, but this has a certain style all its own.
Yeah, and I would say it's inspired an awful lot of others since. And I see a lot of the influence taken from Escape from New York actually in gaming. You see a lot of the kind of tropes from there. One other thing that I want to mention is the soundtrack to this movie, which was done by John Carpenter himself, which he often does. And it's simple, but it's catchy. It's got great music. I really love the soundtrack to this film as well.
I like it and I hate it. It's always stood out for me as being, this is a great theme song. I like that it's raw in the beginning, but God, I wish they'd brought somebody in to orchestrate it up at some point instead of just sticking with that boom, 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 boom.
Oh, interesting.
Boom.
Okay.
It's just, if they had come in, I imagine what so many different people could have done after the raw. Well, example, look at Arnold's original version of Total Recall.
Right.
Where it starts off with that clang, 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 and it's a simple chord progression. But as it goes on and they bring in the strings and they bring in the horns, it becomes bigger. Now, whether a much bigger score might have made the movie less because it's so raw by itself, I don't know. That's a question. But
see, this is one of the reasons that I love this movie so much, is because it really showed there's a lot of things this movie does that I don't think you could get away with most movies. And the reason that it does is because it's a low budget film. And I think if you had a bigger, grander score, it would feel incongruous with what you're seeing on the screen.
Yeah, that could very well be. That could very well be. I think it's interesting that they wanted everybody else in this movie but him. It says that the Avco Embassy, who backed it, wanted Charles Bronson, wanted Tommy Lee Jones, wanted Chuck Norris.
Oh, interesting.
And they said his fighting style is a combination of Bruce Lee, the Exterminator, and Darth Vader with Eastwood's low growl vocal. And,
Yeah, so in the back chat, so this picture I've thrown up here, Lou, you were saying that this isn't actually computer graphics.
That's what Lorn was telling us. It's literally that model you
Lorn,
saw in the other picture.
Yep.
With basically reflective black light tape on all the edges.
That's amazing. I would not have guessed that.
It's how you get around some of the technical limitations. It's like when I was thinking about this, there is, I think, some animation that is in some of the scenes, like when the escape pod is ejected from Air Force One. But that's one of the things I don't think you'd get away with in a bigger budget movie, is that you don't see the plane crash. You see a model that's obviously a model starting to go down. Right. And then you see an animation of a wireframe of a plane with a dotted line showing the escape pod being jettisoned. And then you cut to the ground where you see a tail section of a plane eventually, and then the orange pod with a bunch of rubble kind of stacked around it. And you accept that as the audience. You know what's happened. But a bigger budget movie would have had a giant effect sequence where you see the crash and everything else.
And this movie we have seen that. Air Force One has the whole thing with the pod and everything else.
Yep,
that's right.
But I think that this
it's not a red Easter egg in that one, but
right. But I think this movie gets away with it because everybody knew what this movie was. You know what you're in for when you go for this kind of movie. This would be a perfect drive-in movie double feature.
Yeah, 100%. Well, we were talking a little bit in the back channels before we started this video, and I mentioned the fact that this is going to be a repeating pattern with me, I think, but this is the first time I'd seen Escape from New York. Now, I had seen Escape from LA, and I loved that film. I watched that film a number of times, and going into Escape from New York, what took me aback a little was that whereas Escape from LA is played very much kind of tongue-in-cheek, sort of like an 80s action hero brought into the 90s, where they were starting to kind of deconstruct their films and poke fun at themselves a little bit. This was played straight. Like, there was very little camp in this at all.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think Escape from LA, I love both movies, but I understand why a lot of people don't like Escape from LA. I think it suffers from the fact that it has a bigger budget. Also, by this point, Lee Van Cleef had passed away, and so you have Stacy Keach in the kind of role that Lee Van Cleef played, and he does a great job. But I think the bigger budget and the campier tone didn't quite work as well. I mean, once you get to the surfing scene, I think it does jump the shark a little bit.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I do love the Surgeon General of Beverly Hills. So,
Yes.
they both have their charms.
Well, other things about this movie, the scene on Liberty Island with the Statue of Liberty, that's the first time a movie company has ever been allowed to shoot there.
Oh.
That was another thing that was kind of interesting if you watch the behind the scenes doc, is they do a lot of match moves with cameras where it looks like it's a continuous shot, but it's actually 3 or 4 different locations that are all chained together. But it's really smooth the way they accomplish it here.
And I'm reading that certain matte paintings were rendered by, drum roll please, James Cameron, who was at that time a special effects artist with Roger Corman's New World Pictures. And Cameron was also one of the DPs on the movie. So this was a launch pad for a lot of people. It really was. And it's a movie that succeeds because it doesn't demand anything of you except to watch it and enjoy it. As much as there are all these issues about war and peace and weaponry and society and how you treat prisoners and all the rest of it, it doesn't care. It just uses that as a format to say, guy goes in to get the guy and encounters craziness. End of plot. Like you said at the beginning, it's not complicated. It's simple. It's easy. It's a Saturday night movie, And
it's fun. I'm not a horror fan, but the John Carpenter stuff that I like are when he does sci-fi. I love Escape from New York. I love Escape from LA. He wanted to do more of these. For a long time, they had Escape from Earth and Development Hell. And eventually, he did make a movie, Ghosts of Mars, that was supposed to be Escape from Mars. That was also going to be a Snake Plissken movie, but it kind of fell through. They couldn't get everybody together. So instead, they recast the movie with Ice Cube. And I think his name was Desolation
Jones.
I was wondering if that was it, but I can't remember if that was the last name or not. But basically, it's the same kind of character doing the same kind of things. Ghosts of Mars was also a flop, but that's another one of his movies that I love. Also, if you like John Carpenter, if you like Kurt Russell, you must see Big Trouble in Little China.
Absolutely.
These are some of my very favorite movies.
I love Big Trouble.
Yeah.
When Big Trouble, Kurt has gotten so known for that hardcore guy that he's having fun spoofing himself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just learned something I did not know. Did you know that Adrienne Barbeau was the original Rizzo on Broadway in Grease?
I had no idea.
I had no idea. Anyway, but God, Big Trouble in Little China. But we should do that sometime.
We should. But going back to what I was saying before, though, about this first movie not being tongue in cheek, there are some comedic elements in this film, though.
Oh, sure.
And there are some moments where, especially with his name, everyone keeps calling it they call him Plissken, the police chief, and everyone is like, well, Plissken, you got to do this. And he's like, call me Snake.
Yeah.
And at the very end of the film, when they refer to him as Snake, he's like, the name's Plissken.
Bond, James Bond.
It captures his attitude, though.
Yeah.
He's so anti-authoritarian. And part of what I love about this movie is that after everything that he goes through in this movie, at the end, when the president is about to make his address, he's getting all made up. The president goes a little bit crazy at the end of this movie. And after everything he's been through, you can understand why. But he's now being made up in this chair. He's about to make this important address. And Snake approaches. And he says, no, let him come on in. And Snake says, a lot of people died getting you out of there. I just want to know what you think about all that. And the president is now being the president again. And he says, well, I think they did a great service to the country, and I want to thank them too. I'm going to be going on TV here in a couple of minutes. And I think at that moment, the next scene that you see is the president making his address, and he says that he's going to play this tape that's going to bring all of these countries together in friendship. And it's the audio tape of the American Bandstand theme that Cabby played at his cab. Snake switches the tapes, and the next
because
thing
of course all tapes in this universe have the same brand and the same label.
Yep.
So,
yep.
but the next scene that you see is Snake walking off after he's been let go, pulling the tape out of the cassette and letting the world burn.
Presumably, destroying the secret to nuclear fusion.
And it's all because of the president's attitude. Had the president been sincere, he would have told him and given him the tape, but he wasn't, and he knew he wasn't a good man. And so there it is.
Well, that ties into when I was reading up on this movie a little bit, that ties into a bit about the writing history of the film. Carpenter was writing this film apparently in response to Watergate.
Well, a lot of people did. You know, you in a lot of ways you could say that George did the same with Star Wars because he saw the Emperor as Nixon. I think the Watergate scandal it disillusioned a lot of the American public. A lot of people lost faith in their institutions, and it led to this idea of, gosh, what would a totalitarian state really look like in the United States? And
well, it was to that era what COVID is to ours.
Yep.
It was a universal event. It wasn't just an American political event. It was a world event.
Yeah.
And it was a cultural event, not just a political one. So, look, all through history, famous writers and artists have been inspired by their times and by the passions of their times.
So what inspired Leslie Headland to write The Acolyte, I wonder?
She was frustrated because Harvey got the girls.
There we go.
I don't know what she's got to do with any of this. This woman has gotten more publicity in places she doesn't deserve it, thanks to she's
yes,
culture. If she was a piece of real estate, she would be billed as culture adjacent.
Oh,
well, I want to talk a little bit about Kurt. Because, as you said, this was the first movie where he kind of broke out of that fresh-faced Disney kind of a role. And Kurt Russell is probably my second favorite actor. And I know that
who's number one?
Well, it'd be Harrison Ford. He's kind of one note, but he's my favorite actor. But Kurt, what amazes me about Kurt is I feel like Kurt should be an absolute megastar. And yet somehow he never feels like he really is. He's adjacent. He's been in a lot of the same movies as a lot of these guys, but somehow he never quite rose to that level.
That level of prominence, yeah.
On the other hand, think of all of the movies this guy has done that are classics. You've got, the first thing that he was in was Follow Me, Boys, when he was, 9, I think? Something like that?
Right around there. I was going to say, what was it called? The Travels of Jamie McFeeters was his first regular gig.
Mm-hmm. And you've got he's played Elvis. This guy has played dirty cops. He's played superheroes. He's played
Wyatt Earp,
Captain Ron.
Jack O'Neill in Stargate, the movie.
He's kind of like the Nicolas Cage of the 80s.
He's actually an incredibly versatile actor. He has played all kinds of different roles, and you buy him in them. And I don't think he's ever quite gotten the credit that he should for that. The guy is just an amazing actor. And so there's my pitch for Kurt Russell. I think everybody should watch more of his stuff.
Oh, 100%. I agree. He's, for me, when I see Kurt Russell on a film, it's one of those comforting sort of moments that you at least know you're going to get something pretty entertaining and good out of it, even if the rest of the film isn't that great. And I'm looking at you, Soldier.
God, the TV credit. I'm going to look at all of his credits. He starts uncredited on Dennis the Menace in 1962.
Wow.
From there, he's in 3 episodes of the Dick Powell Theater. I'm going to skip a few, but It Happened at the World's Fair, uncredited Boy Kicking Mike. Travels of Jamie McFeeters. That was his first star show. Man from U.N.C.L.E., Gilligan's Island, The Virginian, The Legend of Jesse James, Laredo, Lost in Space, FBI, The Fugitive, Follow Me Boys, The Road West, the one and only genuine original family band. Remember that? The Horse in the Gray Flannel Suit, Daniel Boone, The Computer Wore Tennis Shoes. Then came Bronson, The High Chaparral, Love American Style. Narrator on something called Dad, Can I Borrow the Car? Room 222, The Barefoot Executive, Charlie and the Angel, whatever that was, Love Story, TV series, Super Dad, Gunsmoke, Heck Ramsey, Harry O, Deadly Tower, Police Story, The Magical World of Disney. That's 67 and 76, 7 episodes. And now he's in Hawaii Five-0 and Elvis, Used Cars, and suddenly here's Escape from New York in 1981. And from there, well, that right after that, what did he do? The voice of Copper on in the Fox and Hound Disney movie. Then from there to The Thing and Silkwood and and then Big Trouble and Tequila Sunrise. That was a good one. I forgot about that. Tango and Cash, Backdraft, of course. Captain Ron. To go from Backdraft to Captain Ron to Tombstone, to Elvis's voice in Forrest Gump, uncredited.
My dad loves Deep Blue, if you know that one.
Yeah. And then Stargate. And then we should do this movie. You want to do another Kurt Russell sometime? Executive Decision. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah. That's a good film. I did see that.
On the airplane with the terrorists with David Suchet, who plays Poirot so wonderfully as the bad guy.
We should do that one.
LA. Yeah. That's, God, Vanilla Sky. I forgot he was in that.
Oh, he was in that.
He was in that.
Oh, that's what it says. Let's see.
He was in he was in a Vin Diesel movie too, wasn't he? Was it either Triple X or was it the Fast and Furious ones later?
I think it was Triple X.
Yeah,
I forgot about that. Right? Yeah, because he was like, I think. I know Sam Jackson was.
Let's see. The Art of the Steal.
Oh, I love that movie. That's another good one.
Yeah, The Hateful Eight.
Yes.
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, of course, and right from that he becomes Santa Claus. I mean, the level of versatility once upon a time in Hollywood, of course.
Right, but that's what I'm talking about. It's like, think about that. The man who played Snake Plissken plays Santa Claus and does a good job playing Santa Claus.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. We watched that one this year, and it was my kids really enjoyed it, and so it was neat seeing Kurt Russell there, kind of cantankerous Santa Claus. But I mean, okay, guys, do you feel that how do I put this? The predictive nature of this film, what they were seeing the world becoming in 1997, they were off by maybe 2 decades, but that we're slowly getting there.
No, I don't think we're slowly getting there. There are things that happen that we're getting, but I think we can read too much into those kind of things. I think we did a little bit with the others.
Demolition Man.
I mean, certain things mitigate towards certain results. And the whole idea of the crime rate going up, and it's like, okay, what do you do to solve it? And while real people in the real world are theoretically, sincerely looking for a way to solve it, artists are free to just throw a dart and come up with something that may not be in reality, but it works, So, I don't know how much it worked. They never told us if putting all those guys in there made the crime rate go back down everywhere else, if the threat of that was enough to inhibit people. So,
well, one of my questions was, during this film, they were concerned about the president still being alive, and they were trying to get these signals from Snake as he was in New York. And even at the beginning, when the unidentified aircraft was sort of taken over by terrorists and was flying over the penitentiary island, they were telexing back and forth to Washington. And I just wonder if in 1997 were people still telexing then in reality?
Well, that's an interesting thing, because the first thing that occurred to me when he gets on the ground and he takes out his little walkie-talkie, and pulls the antenna way out to call in to Lee Van Cleef to tell him he got there in one piece. I'm going, no cell phones, no wireless communication. You have to pull out the antenna to talk,
Well,
and he
Giants,
drops it, it breaks, and he's screwed. You know, I mean, it's like, oh God.
Houck has got an absolutely massive satellite phone.
Yeah.
Yes. When he, at the very beginning, when he pulls out that phone, it's like, it looks like, you know what it looks like? Is the walkie-talkies in World War II.
Oh,
That
yeah.
shows like combat in the old World War II movies. Or the ones that in Bridge Too Far had the wrong crystals.
Yep.
Well, guys,
we can look forward at many things, and other things. Nobody even imagined that enough to say it's 1997. Wouldn't they have a better? And actually, it works for the film, because if it's better, it doesn't get cut off, and they don't get in the dark during the movie about what he's doing and whether he's surviving. So,
true enough. So, one of my questions to you before our penultimate question is: who would win in a fight, Snake Plissken or Mad Max?
Mad Max.
I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to go with Snake.
Wouldn't that be a crossover of the ages?
Cage match. Loser leaves town.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, Lou, one thing you liked about this movie, one thing you didn't like.
I've said that unlike Lorn, I think the music is not serving the film as well as it could have.
Yeah,
if they had done a little more with it. What I like is that it's so simple, so straightforward, so nothing you have to figure out, no riddle you have to solve as an audience. Just sit back and enjoy it. It makes no demands on you other than that you laugh once in a while and you root for the hero.
Yeah.
And that's it shows that some good filmmakers don't have to be pretentious and important and worry about, is it art or not? They just want to tell you a story for an hour and a half and have you have fun. So that would be my biggest thing about it.
Lorn?
Yeah, I think that Lou summarized it perfectly, because this is what I miss about the movies, is that they can be nothing but pure entertainment, and everybody can have fun watching it. It doesn't have to be deep. It doesn't have to be meaningful. It doesn't have to have a message. You can just go and forget what's going on for a little while. And that's something that we've lost. And I think that's part of why I enjoy doing this show with you guys, is that we get to talk about movies that let you remember what going to the cinema used to be about, what made it fun, and hopefully forget what's going on in your life for a little while. And heck, maybe even get together with some people who have opposing views from you and have some shared empathy through the experience that you're seeing on the screen. That's what these communal experiences used to give you. It doesn't work when you're polarized.
And I have to think, people going to see this movie who were my age now then, I mean, my first thought was, I forgot he was in this. What the hell is Ernest Borgnine doing in this movie? But then I realized that's exactly what he's doing is this movie. And even the fact that he's playing the American Bandstand theme, for God's sakes, it's giving you somebody to root for if Snake Plissken isn't your guy, you know? It's and God,
it's a character deflection.
Yeah. Was Isaac Hayes stoned, and did it matter? He's just kind of so low key. It's not even the menace that he has brought to other things. So anyway, they could have had him do a song up there in that balcony overwatching the gladiator match. Anyway, you know, it occurred to me when you were saying that, Lorn, a movie we should do sometime that is about that issue is Sullivan's Travels.
Oh,
Joel McCrea, as a director who is famous for doing light comedy, and he's been talked into the fact that he should do something more important, more relevant, more serious. And by the end of the movie, he realizes, no, he should do what he's doing because it's valuable and it has worth.
Yeah, I don't think that there's anything wrong with making a movie that's light or that makes people laugh or that is a commercial endeavor. You know, not everything needs to be a soapbox. And I think that's something that we're just missing now. And it's why going to the movies isn't fun anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
Sam Goldwyn said it. He said, if you want to send a message, call Western Union. And they're gone now, too. So there you go.
Are they gone now? Really?
Pretty much. I don't think they
Oh,
do the direct
geez.
messages anymore. They still do money transfers, but
Okay.
Telegram, singing
Yeah.
Telegram.
Well, this film, I would say that there's not a lot to not like in this film, I think. Like maybe it's just the fact that you could really get a feel of the limited budget in some of the stuff that they were doing. Like they really squeezed every penny out, and I give them high props for that. But there were times where I was kind of like, yeah, I don't know about this, especially when they some of the special effects they tried to do. But in terms of the stuff that I like again, I just love the character of Snake Plissken, and I'm probably going to go back and watch Escape from LA after this because he's just such a quintessential 80s just awesome action hero. Like I almost wonder why they didn't feature him in the Expendables movies, like it's great. He's like,
and if you think about it, not that he had ever done this kind of thing before, but if he had been doing these all along, his quote unquote competition would be Arnold and Stallone.
Yeah.
Both of them, no matter how hard ass a character they play, always try to throw some little wink and aside and charm into it. He doesn't. He never once tries to endear himself to anybody with a little wry smile because, hey, I am what I am and screw you if you don't agree with me, so he just don't care.
That's true. Well, guys, this was a wonderful discussion. I guess we could call the genre for this one post-apocalyptic action.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yep.
And thank you again for joining. Thank you again to the members for listening and for watching this and giving us your valuable time. It is very much appreciated. Lou, do you want to talk about maybe give us a little weather report about what's coming up next week?
Weather report. You know what? Sitting here right now, I forgot. I was just going to ask you.
Well, it's going to be very hot. It's going to be very hot. I know some people like it that way.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Right. Well, okay. Yeah, of course. Next week, we're going to shock you all. We're doing a drag show.
Oh, boy.
I'd like a rephrase on that.
Nope.
Okay, go for it. Come up with it.
That's a quotable.
We'll be watching a movie that involves a drag show.
You're just scared because you're the only one with the camera on, Lorn. It's okay. There's no judgment here.
But for all of you retro, old-fashioned, politically incorrect heterosexual people, they'll be the most beautiful woman of her time, or certainly on screen, or thought so in the movie too. Now, are we going to tell them, or are we just going to leave it at that?
Let's just leave it at that.
Okay, that's motivation enough. Oh, and it's funny.
I should hope so.
I mean, we've been doing some heavy stuff, even tongue-in-cheek heavy stuff. So
yes,
a comedy by a director who, when we last saw him on this series, was pretty grim, and we all reacted to it. Well, we're going to reprieve him to let him entertain us.
Yes. Well, guys, thank you so much again. And members, give us your thoughts. Did you like Escape from LA? Have you seen it? Did you watch, Escape from New York? My gosh. Have you seen the sequel, Escape from LA? Which one did you like more? Do you feel, as we feel, that Kurt Russell should be a bigger star than he is? Yes, Lou.
I was going to mention, folks, you can see this absolutely for nothing. It's on Freebie, the Amazon free with commercials site. And you know what? The commercials are few and far between and somewhat unobtrusive. So that's a good thing. So here's a free night at the movies. All it costs you is your popcorn.
Yeah. And
watch it.
In all cases, whether you are a member of the Pro Channel or whether you are watching us on T3PO, please leave us your comments, leave us your feedback, hit the like button. We love to hear from you. We want to hear from you. We want to see what you guys think. We're doing this because, well, gosh, we need that audience feedback. So keep it up, keep it happening. And thank you so much for the support. On that note, Lorn, Lou, it's been a pleasure, and we will talk to you next week. Have a good one.
We hope you enjoyed that special presentation of The Genre Guys here on T3PO. Be sure to subscribe to this channel for more content like it. And if you want to enjoy every episode of the Genre Guys as soon as they are released, be sure to become a member at WW Pro's YouTube channel. What were your thoughts on this amazing film? Let us know in the comments below, and thank you so much for watching. T3PO. Please comment, like, and share this video, and don't forget to subscribe to That Park Place Podcasts Online, your source for exclusive content and highlights from WDW Pro, The Pro Show, and That Park Place, for all the news that should be fun.